A group of doctors has filed a lawsuit against several big tech companies. They claim that Twitter, Google, and Facebook worked with the government to censor criticism of federal and state COVID policies in violation of the First Amendment.
Daily Wire culture reporter Megan Basham joins us now to give us more information on the lawsuit, who's involved, and what the outcomes might be. So, Megan, to start, who is bringing this suit and on what grounds?
Yeah, so the case is the state of Missouri v. Joseph R. Biden, and it involves a group of prominent physicians and epidemiologists who are critical of the government's restrictive COVID policies. Think about things like lockdowns, mask mandates, vaccine mandates. Well, we talked to Kara Frederick, who is director of the Tech Policy Center at the Heritage Foundation, and we asked her just how credentialed the members of this group bringing the suit, and they're, by the way, known as the New Civil Liberties Alliance, just how credentialed they are. Here's what she said.
These aren't just your quacks who are operating on the internet, trying to make a buck or anything like that. These are legitimate doctors with legitimate degrees. They were not just people who are coming off the streets and saying, this is what I think.
Now, this is not just legitimate doctors, we need to note, but in several instances, we're actually talking about Ivy League trained experts in their fields. And they made Freedom of Information Act requests related to the White House's public 2021 statements about working with big tech to suppress COVID misinformation. You may remember White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki talking about that. Well, as a result of those FOIA requests, they claim they have emails and documentation that can prove that the CDC and the Department of Homeland Security asked Google, Twitter, and Facebook to take down certain social media posts and to also suspend certain accounts for questioning those COVID policies. So the lawsuit is arguing that at that point, these companies were no longer acting just as private entities. They were effectively acting as arms of the government. If that's true, that would be unconstitutional. And I'll quote from just a bit of New Civil Liberties Alliance's press release on that. Here's what they said. This insidious censorship was the direct result of the federal government's ongoing campaign to silence those who voice perspectives that deviate from those of the Biden administration. Government officials' public threats to punish social media companies that did not do their bidding demonstrate this linkage.
Now, what if these tech companies, though, were acting of their own volition and not because of government pressure?
Yeah, that's a good question, Georgia. And part of the Communications Decency Act, known as Section 230, does give big tech a lot of special protection from civil liability in that case. So here's what Frederick told us about that.
If they're only making that one decision from, the bottom of their hearts and not with government pressure, then that's what they're going to argue. But the fact that the government is actually flagging and pressuring them to remove the speech and sort of being the prime mover in this regard, I think it's a little bit different.
So she guesses that is likely the defense that we're going to see.
Now, has that argument been tested in court before? Now, I remember big tech was taking down a lot of posts and videos at the height of COVID. Are we seeing any similar lawsuits that we can look at?
Yeah, so Frederick cited another case that's currently working its way through the courts that could have some bearing on this one. It involves conservative commentator Rogan O'Hanley. Now, O'Hanley alleges that California officials pressured Twitter to flag his tweets and suspend his account. So again, something that would clearly violate the First Amendment if his claim is accurate. Here's Frederick.
The Office of the Secretary of State in California was flagging specific tweets containing specific forms of information they considered disinformation to Twitter, and Twitter eventually started to scrutinize this particular user. So we don't know where that's going to end up, but I think people are starting to recognize that this is a pattern of government pressure on big tech companies that appeared to pick up during the pandemic and really hasn't abated.
So if either of these suits should be successful, that could have some pretty significant impact on those Section 230 protections that big tech does currently enjoy.
Megan, thanks for reporting.